We had loads of cozy games releasing in 2024. Some gems were unexpectedly good and others maybe not so much. So today I'm ranking every cozy game I played this year from S to D tier. If you're new here, hey, I'm Cloudy, and my love for cozy games goes way back to Harvest Moon and Rune Factory. And here on my channel, we love immersive cozy sims with especially charming characters to bond with. This list might help you discover your next favorite game or even decide whether a title is worth your time. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Creatures of Ava is such a beautiful game with a refreshing concept that I hadn't seen before. It is an action-adventure and a creature-saving game in which we are a researcher crash landing on a foreign planet and trying to understand and tame the creatures of Ava. I loved how the main theme of it was empathy and how we could play the flute to communicate with the creatures and live in harmony with them, rather than keeping them captive. The way they depicted the world, the culture, and its people was mesmerizingly beautiful. It had a wonderful message to tell, and I'm not quite sure why it didn't hook me in the long run, because the exploration parts were also really fun. In the end, it might just be the fact that we play as a predetermined character that made it a little harder to feel fully immersed at times, though in general there is absolutely nothing wrong with a game that tells its own story. It just didn't make me feel hyped on a personal level. The taming and healing creature segments might have been a little hectic for me too, because I died quite a couple of times. Ultimately, I would put Creatures of Ava into the A tier. It is such a beautiful title with such a great idea and a wonderful artistic vision, and it is definitely worth picking it up again. Ova Magica is a creature collecting farm life sim with JRPG elements. We take care of our farm and our little blobs while making friends in town. First of all, I was very intrigued by this game because I found the idea of combining creature collecting with farming really original. The battle system was also well thought out and generally fun. The only thing that wasn't quite up my alley was the art direction and world building. It is clear that this game was created with care, but for me, that personal disconnection to the art and theme impacted my overall experience with the game. It just didn't pique my curiosity enough to make me want to dive deeper into its world. The creature collecting and breeding were very cool features indeed, but it just wasn't enough for my personal fulfillment, and that's why, for me, Ova Magica ends up in the B tier. It is undeniably a very cozy game though. Echoes of the Plum Grove is a cozy farm life simulation with consequences in which we build up a thriving community. Oh, the tea in this game was really so delicious. The consequences gave it so much spice and added so much fun to the gameplay when there were things at stake. I absolutely loved how everything could turn chaotic. People getting sick, your crush possibly marrying someone else, or even being a little evil and poisoning other people. The generational gameplay was something I've been craving in farming sims and life simulations like these. Echoes of the Plum Grove had so much potential. It really had almost everything I wanted to make it a personal favorite of mine. The only issue was with the indefinitely generated new villagers that respawned as others died. It is hard to program so many unique dialogues for each character and personality type, which ultimately was the reason it didn't become my favorite game. I thought it was such a pity because I adored this game so much. It definitely belongs in the A tier. Sunnyside is a JRPG and a farm life hybrid set in rural Japan. This game initially impressed me a lot because it was clear that the developers cared deeply about accurately representing Japanese culture. Like me, and they are fans of Persona and incorporated socializing features that were right up my alley. The game has a very distinct style and identity, and the world and architecture are really beautiful. From a gameplay mechanics perspective though, I felt like they were trying to do too much at once. It was a very ambitious project with intricate systems that in the end may have been more complex than necessary. I understand the game's philosophy of encouraging a slow life is reflected in the detailed farming system, and while it can be fun for some, it just wasn't for me and I found it a bit tedious. As a farming sim, it wasn't my favorite, but I did find it immersive. Having spent time in the Japanese rural countryside, it felt very much like my second home, and I truly appreciated that aspect. While it's by no means a bad game, it felt a bit disorganized and I think it needed some refinement. So I have placed it in the C tier. Fields of Mistria is probably the most polished early access indie game of the year, and I'm sure many other people would agree. It is a magical farming RPG and life sim where we build the farm of our dreams, restore the town of Mistria, discover its secrets, and experience romance and adventure. Just based on its art direction and look, its pastel retro design is already plenty to keep you hooked. The gameplay loop felt very well paced and satisfying without being too overwhelming. It just felt right. On a personal level, I especially appreciate the writing and the dialogues and the character designs, which are probably a major reason why I was super hooked on this game and why it is one of my favorite games this year. The way they depicted the characters didn't feel one-dimensional. It just kept me wanting to get to know more about them. And I still don't feel like I already know everything there is to know. Fields of Mistria is still in early access, but it has already shown immense potential, so it is going into the S tier. As a former player of the Nikki series, I was so happy to see this game come to life. Infinity Nikki is a free-to-play open-world dress-up game in which we dive into the world of Mirrorland, searching for a magical dress that can save the world. This is a massive improvement over the old mobile games, and it has never been open world before. I think it is just incredibly aesthetically pleasing and whimsical, and all the designs are absolutely stunning, and I really love how we can customize Nikki as a character. And I'm especially a big fan of the photo mode. Solving jumping puzzles was so much fun, and from a gameplay perspective, it felt extremely satisfying. The only problem I have with this game is that it is a free-to-play gacha game. If you want some of the time-limited event outfits, you also need to log in frequently. And I'm just not the type of person who can keep up with that in the long run. When the hype was at its peak, I was really excited to log in every day, and I did so for about a week or two. But at some point, life just happens and you stop playing for a while. And when you come back, it just feels like you have missed out on things, and I really hate that feeling. And I also don't want to spend any real money on tickets without the guarantee that I'll get the stuff I want. This is the only reason why I wouldn't place this game in S tier, but in A tier. For me, this was a really cute game with a decent base idea, but it is lacking in execution. Critter Cafe is a cozy cafe management sim and creature collecting game with puzzle elements. I love the cute design of the furniture, the puzzle stages, the natural landscape, and the orchards, but it doesn't go as deep as I think it should have. The actual cafe management and critter care features were sadly on the weaker side. I would actually not recommend this game because it didn't have any particular substance to it that would make me want to keep playing. And after a short while, I felt like I had already seen everything there is to see. I also think they should have given the critters more personality and variety in their behaviors, because it would have made them feel more like living beings rather than just collectible objects. I was really looking forward to bonding with the critters, but the simplicity of it all made it impossible for me to feel immersed. Initially, it did look very cute and it had potential, but I think it needs a lot more work and love to it, which is why I would place it in the D tier. The My Sims Cozy Bundle is a retro re-release of a game series that defined my childhood. And I think it mostly appeals to people who feel a wave of nostalgia for the old games, but I'd still say that it can also be fun for those who are new to the spin-off series. In these two games, we are in charge of restoring our town, decorating houses, running errands for our villagers, and attracting new characters to move in. Playing it felt like being catapulted back to my childhood, because the game is just as I remember it, only this time on my Switch. I love making progress in my town, unlocking new areas to explore, and meeting new characters with connections to the lore of the Sims franchise. It is the kind of game I like to play in short bursts because it is so easy to pick up again after taking a break. The only reason I would place this game in the B tier instead of the A tier is that it just feels like a straightforward port rather than a remake with modern innovations. And I think adding a few quality of life elements could have gone a long way in modernizing the experience and making it even more enjoyable for today's audiences. Coffee Caravan is a game I had a lot of fun with for a very short while, because I basically binged it all the way through. It is a cafe management game where we run our own coffee business, and I really enjoyed the satisfying gameplay loop. I also really loved the 3D clay-like design of the game. It is very pastel, very polished, and super cute. I didn't come across any bugs, and it was incredibly addicting to play for as long as it lasted. The thing is, after finishing all the stages, it felt kind of over, and I didn't feel like going back to it. But I just wish there was more to it. While you can decorate parts of your coffee caravan, it still felt like something was missing. It is definitely far from a bad game, but for me, it was just a very short experience. I would place it in the C tier because while it had a lot of potential, it didn't have enough to keep me coming back. Of course, I am a Simmer to the core, and I've probably played every Sims game out there by now. But Lovestruck and Life and Death are two expansion packs that dropped this year, so I thought I'd share my thoughts on them. I was most hyped for Lovestruck because I love matchmaking and diving deeper into romance, and I was really hoping the Sims team would expand on relationships which have felt a bit shallow in the past. But honestly, it didn't deliver as much as I had hoped. The only real addition was the matchmaking and attraction system, which, while fun at first, felt pretty bare bones. And for the price of the pack, I was definitely expecting more. On the other hand, Life and Death has been a real game changer for Simmers. I'd even consider it an essential pack now. It adds so much meaning to the Sims' lives by introducing a life cycle that includes rebirth, fulfilling goals in the afterlife, and even carrying on as a ghost. Plus, there is a ton of new content. Festivals, funerals, graveyards, and 2 entire careers. I could go on, but this pack really exceeded my expectations. Now, ranking these packs, Life and Death will go into the A tier for me, but since Lovestruck wasn't all that satisfying, I'm placing it in the C tier. Go-Go Town is a chaotic town management sim where we play as the mayor and build up our town, make it thrive, and attract new villagers to move in. There are so many things that stand out about it, starting with its goofy art direction, the humor, and the extremely groovy music that I just can't get out of my head. But in general, the gameplay is also very satisfying. I love town simulation games, so I have been playing Go-Go Town since its early playtest days. They keep innovating and adding new things. I can't even keep track of it all. The automation process of collecting resources is such a great quality of life feature I didn't realize I needed. At first, you collect everything manually, but later you can hire people who will do the work for you. I'm also really in love with all the vehicles that we can use to cruise through our town, and I think there should be so many more cozy games like these that feel so fresh, unique, and goofy. Go-Go Town isn't my favorite cozy game because it is missing just a little something to keep me hooked, like a story, for example, because I would love background stories for the characters, but for what it does offer, I had a lot of fun with it, and that's why I'm placing it in the A tier. In Reka, we practice witchcraft, decorate our own home in the woods, and uncover the mysteries surrounding an old legendary witch. Reka was a great game for the autumn season because it had wonderful witchy cottagecore vibes. I also immensely appreciate that the game is based on Slavic folklore because the overall atmosphere was great and the music was really on point for the theme. I also think that the gridless construction and free furniture placement leave a lot of room for creativity. This game really manages to make you feel like you've been living alone in the woods with your own chicken-legged hut. It was both a little eerie and yet cozy at the same time, and I really liked that. There were landscapes to explore, but since those were procedurally generated, I feel like I would have preferred a handcrafted map full of little details to discover. The forest was beautiful, but at some point I didn't feel the need to see more of it. I also wasn't too much of a fan of the fetch quests. In general, I do love the idea behind it, so Reka is a solid B tier. Love Ghostie is a cozy matchmaking simulation in which we play as a ghost and grow the relationships of the manor's residents. I already knew that I would love this game a lot when I read it was about playing a matchmaker. This was really my absolute favorite aspect. It is really heartwarming and lovely to read these stories. I think the replayability for this game is actually pretty high if you consider how many different pairings are possible. So that aspect I was really impressed by. I also liked how the characters can gift each other things and we can place them into the room. It is a cute little touch, but I just somehow wished it was even more customizable and expansive in a way. I do understand that this would have exceeded the scope of the game, but I think this was a little something that was missing for me. Yet this game really made me smile, and I think it also has the potential to make you cry, and I can only recommend playing it. And this means this game belongs in the A tier. Chef RPG is just that type of game that I thought I would immediately fall in love with, and I just couldn't wait for it. In a Chef RPG, we start a new life as a chef in a beautiful seaside town and start a new culinary adventure. I have already mentioned it a lot, but I love cooking management sims, and on top of it all, this one was kind of cyberpunk inspired with Japanese influences, which was a blend I got absolutely crazy over. I can say that this game has put a lot of thought into its world building. The pixel art food looks super gorgeous too, and I had quite a bit of fun with the cooking gameplay loop. So the reason why it doesn't rank as high for me is that I think it is just unfinished. It is still an early access game, and I think it simply needs to add more content, such as things to interact with in the world, seasonal events, fleshing out the character dialogues, and adding a complete story. Of course, it was mostly that I really wanted to love this game so much, but when it actually came to playing it, I felt like there wasn't that much to do and achieve other than expanding the restaurant. I think in the coming year or two, it definitely has the potential to become even greater. It kind of breaks my heart to say it, but I would put a Chef RPG into the C tier. I know Animal Crossing Pocket Camp itself isn't technically an entire new game, and Pocket Camp Complete is just a final paid offline version. But I just had to include it in this list because I have been playing it obsessively since its release on December 2nd, and I have yet to put it down. And I think it has gotten so much better now. It doesn't feel as time-gated as it used to be before, and if I wanted to get certain items, I know I'm just going to get them. Something that I really like about Pocket Camp is just how easy it is to make progress if you want to. And New Horizons, in comparison, is just very slow-paced and lacking some quality of life elements that make it really hard for me to gather what I like, and I need a lot of patience to do all the terraforming too. Pocket Camp Complete, on the other hand, is just every decorator's paradise, and needlessly to say, the furniture designs are absolutely stunning. I wish we had these in a mainline Animal Crossing game, because they are just that gorgeous. I can totally see myself actually playing this game continuously throughout the coming years, since the little seasonal events add enough spice to keep me coming back for more. So Animal Crossing Pocket Camp Complete is definitely an S-tier game for me. To be quite honest, while I did have my personal favorites, I don't think 2024 was necessarily the best year for cozy games. But luckily, 2025 will bring so many new cozy games that I am extremely hyped for. So I would definitely recommend sticking around with me and also checking out my other video of my most anticipated titles 2025. But that's everything from me. Have lovely holidays, my friends, and see you in the next video.